Welcome everyone. My name's Ash DaCosta, CTO of Mainland Information Systems. And I'm here with Mike Larsson, who's our Manager of Enterprise Operations. And I'd like to welcome you to our brief introduction of XtremIO all-flash storage array from EMC. Just getting to the nitty-gritty of it, what is XtremIO? So very briefly, what it essentially is a all-flash storage system that is comprised of X bricks, as they call it. And a single X brick contains two active storage nodes, and as well 25 400 gig solid-state drives, SSDs. 7 terabytes of usable storage, and because it has a inline deduplication capability, it can grow up to 70 terabytes of logical capacity if you factor in 10-to-1 deduplication. Performance-wise, 150,000 IOPS, assuming a 50-50 read-write ratio, and it's fully random 4K block size. So that's quite a performance number, if you will, for a solid-state storage system. Today, what we're going to talk about is the value proposition it has and two particular use cases, and that is for database workloads and for VDI. So to talk about the database workload value proposition, I want to hand it over to Mike, who will take it from there.
So in this example, I'm going to show how companies are using database management. So I'll put that up here actually. And how they always have a production environment and a test environment and a development environment. It requires, production plus equal amounts of storage for the other ones, and often the same tier of storage, at least for test, which can be very expensive. When you have an option for XtremIO, you can take this production environment and without having to recreate new LUNs and offer them to the test servers and new LUNs and offer them to the development servers, you can actually just provision a snapshot of this guy and a snapshot to development. And that works very well, especially if the data doesn't change very much. If the development and test environments are just running queries, but not changing large amounts of data, that allows you to have very little overhead while all three of the systems are using the same main storage there, which reduces the footprint from 30 terabytes to maybe 11 terabytes if these were 500 gigs each. And that can be a huge amount of cost savings without having to have any overhead of the IOPS. Because normally if you did a snapshot, which you can do in the traditional arrays, you usually start losing performance fairly quickly. And that's why they usually provision separate storage for each of them. So that's one of the advantages XtremIO can do and how it can actually reduce overall storage costs when you actually are just using snapshots there without giving up any performance. Over to you, Ash.
So we're not going to talk about the next use case for XtremIO, and that's virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI. When people architect toward VDI, the impression is that they have to architect toward boot storms. And that is to say, when everybody comes into work at the beginning of the day, everyone starts up their desktops, and it spikes the I/O, if you will, on the infrastructure, and specifically the storage system. However, it's more than just that. You have application startups and various other types of activities throughout the day that actually generate a tremendous amount of IOPS. To illustrate that example, I have a bunch of typical applications that people would have on their desktops, and the IOPS impact they can have. So what we found is that, for example, for Outlook and Microsoft Word, it's about 1,000 IOPS when it first starts up. For Visio, it's around 2,000, Internet Explorer 1,200, and in this case, Excel exceeds even 3,000 IOs per second. Understand that's not sustained, that those are in fact spikes, if you will. Nevertheless, the point I'm trying to make is where people were architecting for virtual desktop infrastructures for below 50 IOs per second, typically, today, the more modern number to be used for each desktop would be about 75 to 100 IOs per second.
And that's per desktop?
Yes, correct. 75 to 100. And the reason for that is not just, yeah, sure, for this reason, but also because people are now expecting a much shorter response time. Because they have laptops now, they're used to laptops with solid-state drives in them. And as a result, you're getting a lot more expectation out of the type of desktop experience that end users are looking for. So the upshot of it is that storage, in the end, is always going to be the key bottleneck in when architecting VDI infrastructures. Okay? As a result, the industry has adopted flash as the solution to that problem. And in this case, what we're going to be talking about is XtremIO specifically as the answer to that problem. As we stated earlier, XtremIO can provide about 150,000 IOs per second, given a mixed read-write workload, 50-50 read-write distribution, if you will. What that translates to is if you have 1,000 desktops, each desktop can handle about 150 IOs per second. Conversely, what it could also mean is that if your desktops do not generate that kind of IO load, let's say, for example, it's half that, you can increase the number of desktops, let's say to up to 2,000. In fact, VCE's vBlock that has XtremIO built into it for VDI deployments can provide about 3,500 desktops, if you will, out of one X brick.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Exactly, exactly. And so that's the value proposition that XtremIO brings to the table out of a full all-flash array compared to other array solutions that are hybrid solutions. In hybrid situation, you have to move the data up into a flash storage tier in order to provide the type of IOs that are required, and it doesn't usually stay there. Sometimes it gets migrated back. In the case of XtremIO, it's all flash, so it always stays pinned at the highest level of performance capabilities, if you will.
Well, it looks like a great solution for VDI.
Oh, absolutely. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for a very brief introduction to XtremIO, in particular how it delivers value for VDI and database workloads. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you very much.